Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2023 film Renfield. And first, I'm just going to tell you, this is one of the best shirts I own. Just got to put it out there. What would Pinhead do with a, wrong side, Doug Bradley signature? Anyway, we are here to talk about, in a no spoilers fashion, the film Renfield, which, let's just throw it out there in the first place. Yes, Nicolas Cage plays Dracula in this film. Apparently, this was a lifelong dream of Nicolas Cage's to play Dracula in a film. So much so that when he heard about this going on, he was like, I have to throw my hat in the ring. I have to get this role. This is something to basically check off his bucket list. So that said, I think we got exactly what we thought we would get, and it is a treat, in my opinion. At least as far as the Dracula performance. So I'll go over what I do like, what I don't like with the film, and all that. And I'll give you my rating at the end, so let's get into it. Renfield, directed by Chris McKay, who also did episodes of Moral Oral, Robot Chicken, did the Lego Batman movie, which I enjoyed. I had a fun time with that one. And The Tomorrow War, which I haven't seen that, and I don't even know if I had heard of that one. This was written by Ryan Ridley, who also wrote episodes of Community, as well as Rick and Morty, so good comedic pedigree there. As well as Ava Tramer, who wrote episodes of Angie Tribeca, Atypical, Duncanville, and Central Park. And also Robert Kirkman involved in writing this one. Obviously, most people know him from all the Walking Dead things, including the original comic books that all those shows and their ridiculous spin-offs are based off of. So, yeah. Obviously has Nick Cage in it. I already talked about him. We all know what he's been in. Awkwafina is in it, and she's been in Jumanji 2, Crazy Rich Asians, Shang-Chi, and The Legend of the Ten Rings, just to name a few of the more popular titles she's been in. I will say, a lot of times I'm not a big fan of her personality, her in roles, the way she does her acting. It's very, over the top and ridiculous. But I actually really liked her in this role in this film. So kind of surprised me going into it. I was going to be like, oh no, I'm going to be annoyed by Awkwafina again. Not the case. She fits this role well, and she did a good job. And yeah, it was a good role. Also, Nicholas Hoult is in this. You might know him from Skins, the newer version of Clash of the Titans, X-Men First Class, Warm Bodies, Mad Max Fury Road, or most recently, The Menu, which I really did enjoy, and he did a great job in. Synopsis. It's about Renfield, the old school, I was going to say master, not the master, the old school servant of his master Dracula that goes all the way back to Bram Stoker's Dracula, and has had a bunch of iterations throughout time, but I don't think there's ever been, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I could be, go ahead and put it in the comments, I don't think there's ever been a movie that's focused mainly on Renfield, so I felt like this was a cool, interesting take, and even if there has been before, it's not common at all. We usually get, it's about Dracula primarily. We don't get, it's about Renfield primarily, and I do like what they did with it, because they put a little story to it that involves what Renfield is going through, because Renfield is feeling very conflicted about the fact that he's been a servant to Dracula, and he's involved in basically bringing people to their death so Dracula can feed, and he doesn't want to be a terrible guy. So it's a lot about that struggle, and then how things get very complicated because it's found out by Dracula that he's trying to not be as helpful as he should be for Dracula. So yeah, then things get messy. Let's just put it that way, in a very fun way. So that's where I'm going to leave it. You don't really need to know too much. I don't think the story is all that complicated. I don't think it's very rich of a story. I actually don't really like the story itself that much, but there are a lot of other great aspects to this film, in my opinion. They give you backstory very early on in the film. First thing, they jump into the backstory of, Renfield and Dracula, which is very effective, and they do it also in a fun way. There's also, in this film, especially, and this is established with that, backstory stuff immediately, a lot of nods to, the older, more iconic Draculas. Those films, there's a little bit Nosferatu-ish going on there. There's some Bela Lugosi to Nick Cage's Dracula. So I love those kind of nods to where the character of Dracula has been before. Not as many to Renfield, just because Renfield's not a very well-known character, at least not in comparison to Dracula. But they do a good job of kind of putting that backstory out there for anyone who doesn't know about Renfield. Like my wife, she watched this film with me, and she was like, "What's going on? Like, what is the deal with Renfield?" Because she was on her phone for the first part. She wasn't paying attention to the backstory thing. Because that's how she watches horror films with me. It's like a half watching it type thing on the phone, and then sometimes looking at the screen. So it's a good introduction to people for Renfield. The tone is immediately very light and fun. So I like that. You do get the idea immediately. We're going to get some comedic stuff. We're going to get fun stuff. It's not going to get super serious or deep or drama filled. It's going to be light and it's going to be fun, which makes sense because McKay, who, like I said before, did the Lego Batman movie, that's their style for the most part. So it has stylized fighting in it, which goes along with the whole like light and fun aspect of it. So if you're a big fan of stylized fighting in films, there's plenty of that in this movie. So enjoy that. There's legitimately good humor. This is one of the biggest things. It is very hard to get a good mixture of story in a horror film along with humor, and also to get humor that's funny enough that it actually mixes into the story. And in this one, not everything was funny in this, but I think they did a pretty good job of getting me to chuckle to myself a little bit a few times. And it's not easy to get me to kind of do that, to be honest. So they did have some things that were good. And it's not overly vulgar. It's not ridiculous. They didn't go for the most low-hanging fruit a lot of the time, so I really appreciate that. You can tell they really put a lot of thought into trying to be legitimately funny, as opposed to just being like, let's just put in a bunch of dick and fart jokes, which is kind of like a go-to for people when they're like, oh, we're doing comedy, so dick and fart jokes, let's do that. The practical effects are nice, but the CGI is less so. They don't focus on the CGI too much, so you don't get too many moments of it looking super wonky. I'm looking for how the CGI is presenting in these films because I'm doing reviews. So when I was looking, there was one part in particular where like someone gets cut open. CGI didn't look great, but it also wasn't focusing on it a lot. There are practical effects in it, like I was saying. Those are good. There's the use of CGI for blood. There's also practical blood in this. Obviously, the practical blood looks better than the CGI blood, but the CGI blood is relatively quick, so that still looks good. And the other thing is, there's a lot of blood in this. It's all over the place. It's very ridiculous. I'm a fan of that. Because this is a comedic horror film, I love to see that. That's what I really want to see, is that when gore happens, that the blood is almost too much, that it's so over the top that it's just flying everywhere and it's ridiculous. And they do that with this film, so they delivered that for me. The directing is very snappy and engaging. Along with it being kind of light and fun, the directing and the cinematography really rolls into that, making you feel like things are moving, things are quick. That's also a bit about the pacing of how the script is written as well. But yeah, I think there are moments where the story is actually pretty lacking and the pacing really could have been suffering, but the directing style and the way the cinematography looks really keeps it more engaging and kind of like pushes it forward a little bit better, in my opinion. So I like that aspect of it quite a bit, because I hate bad pacing. The actual story, in my opinion, is kind of didn't love the actual story. I love the theme that they're going with here. I was going to say subtext. It's not even subtext. It's like right in your face. It's surface text about what the struggles that Renfield is going through in relation with Dracula, and power struggles and stuff like that, and how it relates to the real world. So I like that aspect of the story. I think that's a fresh, interesting take. But the rest of the story and where they take it and the other characters who get involved, don't really care for it. I think it's kind of whatever, in my opinion. There are some very unique fight scenes that are cool and at times funny. I really appreciate appreciated that. I didn't think with the stylized fighting that I was going to end up getting scenes where I thought the fights were funny. I thought it was just going to be like, okay, there's some comedic stuff in it, but then with the fighting, it's just fighting. And it looks cool. So I love the fact that there are some funny moments. There's one in particular involving someone's arms that really got me. I really thoroughly enjoyed that fight for the arm part mainly. But the ending of this is okay. Didn't love the ending. I do feel like the ending was probably too drawn out. Definitely too drawn out. Yeah, I mean, it's an hour and 33-minute film. It moves pretty well for the most part, but I do feel like the ending dragged a bit. But the very, very end, how they leave it, is fun. And a lot of people will end up enjoying that. So, overall, I did enjoy the film. Nick Cage as Dracula is what you would expect, which is what I was saying. That's one of the biggest positives of this film. He kind of takes center stage. He's not supposed to, because Renfield is supposed to be the main character in this, but I mean, Nick Cage doing Dracula, like, how can you not just want more of that? And I think they gave him a good amount of screen time because they knew what they had with him. I don't know if it was initially scripted that way for him to have as much as he did, but he just goes for it. It's the most Nick Cage Dracula, and it's a great iteration of Dracula, so I was pretty happy with it. It's not the best film ever, but out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I'm going to give it a very good 3.5-star rating. Thought about 4, but I'm like, it's just really not at a 4 level, especially with the story. But yeah, they accomplished a good amount. It's a 3.5-star film for me personally, and this is where I would like to find out what you think of the film. Go ahead and put it in the comments. Love it, hate it, in between. Let me know. Give me like a sentence or two. And how much did you like or dislike or feel ambivalent about the Nick Cage Dracula experience? Because I would say, based off of this, I would like to see another Nick Cage Dracula film. I really, really would. Whether it's a prequel, sequel, whatever, I want it. But anyway, thank you everyone for checking this out. Please do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I greatly appreciate that. Also, the notification bell button, hit that so you know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing 3 a week. Literally, your best way to support me and to repay me for all this content is to just subscribe and just watch the videos. I mean, that's basically it. That's all I'm asking for. But thanks for checking this out, and until next time, keep it brutal.